Hi guys! So today you are going to be looking at the history of op art, and you're going to be making something that looks a little bit like this. You can use a pencil, you can use Sharpie if you have one, or you can use markers or crayons. You should also try to have something that's like a straight edge. Ruler would be perfect. If you don't have one, you can use the edge of another paper or maybe a book or a binder. All right?
Let's learn about op art, not to be confused with pop art. Op art stands for optical art, art that uses optical illusions. These are pieces that trick the brain into thinking something is happening that couldn't really happen in real life. The name op art was coined by Time magazine in 1964. The first op artist I want to talk about is Bridget Riley, who was born in London in 1931. Her father was a printer who owned his own business. She didn't have much schooling until attending college, and as an adult she worked in a glassware shop, as an illustrator, and as an art teacher. In 1958 she saw the work of Jackson Pollock and was inspired. She was also inspired by the scientific dot style of Georges Seurat. Around 1960, she began her signature op art style. Some of her best known op art is black and white, geometric lines and shapes that create the illusion of movement. Another op artist is Victor Vasarely. He often used colorful paintings to make 3D illusions by having clever uses of color or shapes that bend as if they are popping out of the painting. My favorite op artist is M.C. Escher. He was born Maurits Cornelius Escher on June 17, 1898 in the Netherlands. He was a sickly child who had trouble in school but was very good at art. In 1922, Escher went traveling and in Spain was inspired by the Moorish architecture at the palace called Alhambra. The decorations in this architecture are very geometric, and it has tessellations. A tessellation is an interlocking pattern that repeats with no gaps. At first, he drew very realistic art of the many places he visited, but he became more and more interested in the strange things you can do using math in art. He made impossible structures that twisted crazily in a way that wouldn't work in normal space and gravity. He used tessellated designs, and they're some of his most famous and impressive and recognizable works. Check out some of his art here. This one. This. Oh. Okay. These. This is a beautiful work. I like the details here. Very good. Very impressive. Look at all the effort that it must have taken. Interesting. In April of 1966, Martin Gardner featured Escher's art in his Mathematical Games column in the magazine The Scientific American. Escher became famous with math lovers for his wild art that used math to bend the laws of physics. Another intellectual who did op art was Akiyoshi Kitaoka, who would make very bright, colorful, and almost hard to look at op art that tricks your brain with the bright overlapping colors. Let's look at some examples of op art. Maybe this one, this. These are older, newer. Some simple, some more complex. Traditional, very strange. Okay, guys. Bye.
Alright guys, so I'm starting out, I'm drawing a couple of basic shapes. I have a circle, a rectangle, I think I did an oval, and a triangle. So I want to do these in pencil lightly at first in case I mess up and need to erase. And now I'm going to get my straight edge, whether that's a ruler or another piece of paper or a binder. I'm just going to pick a direction. I did a diagonal line, and I'm going to echo that line throughout my entire paper. When I get to a shape, I'm gonna stop and go around my shape. So you want your lines to be as even as possible. They should be pretty much the same distance apart from each other. Mine are not perfect. I didn't measure it, but you're gonna try to do the best you can, and that's gonna really help you create that optical illusion. So you can see I got to one of my shapes. I'm going around my shape. I didn't outline my shape. You're going to be able to see it from the lines that go in another direction, which we're going to get to at the end. So if you don't have a Sharpie, you could be using a marker. You could just be using your pencil. You could use a crayon, whatever you have. So my ruler wasn't quite long enough to go all the way across my paper. I kind of just fudged it and scooted my ruler. That was a little bit tricky. You can see my lines get a little bit more uneven, but do the best you can. So you can see I finally got to my second shape, and I'm just going around it the same way I did my first one. then this is where I forgot that I even had an oval in that corner. So I had to redo it, erase it, because I had already gone over my first one. Whoops. So I'm just finishing up that last corner from where I had started. And now I'm going to choose a direction for the lines in my shapes. I don't want to go with the same direction that I did my first lines because then my shapes would kind of just disappear. So I want to choose a different direction. You're going to do the same thing that you did before. You're echoing that line. They're going to be parallel. And I'm doing the same thing for all of my shapes. So your shapes can be all the same direction of lines. I did mine all different directions just to make it a little more interesting. So since the shapes aren't outlined, you actually have what are called implied lines. So we didn't outline the shapes, but you can still tell that they're there. You can tell where the edges of the shapes are. Those are implied lines. So this video is obviously sped up, but this is something that took me about 30 minutes, so it should definitely fill the class time for you guys. Alright, and we're finally done.